Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students, and a very good day to all of you. I welcome you to the 10th lecture of report writing skills. So far we have covered introduction to report, talking about its structure and then moving about towards the types of the report. Once that section of report was complete, we moved onwards towards looking to this concept of technical writing in journal, and then discussed in detail the different objectives, or you can call them as the traits of technical writing. Now hopefully, based on all this discussion which we had in the previous lectures, you are now in a position to write your own content when the time comes or when a task is assigned to you. So that's why we are going to move within our next lectures to the actual writing process, which will be the focus. Just giving you a quick recap of what we discussed in the previous slides in the previous lecture. These were the last three traits which were discussed in detail, talking about the accessible document design, the audience recognition, and talking about the manner in which you can simply develop and create an accurate draft and content. So now talking about the writing process itself. Writing, as I told you in the initial stages and lectures as well, is the ultimate outcome or goal of a language. When you start acquiring a language in the initial ages, at the very beginning of your language acquisition, so it all begins with this listening, and then based on that listening you start and you learn to speak. And once your schooling begins, the time begins when you are made to read different fonts, different languages. The basic focus is, of course, in our own Pakistani context, is towards English language and of course the Urdu language. When you learn how to read, the next step is of course coming to the final stage, which is the writing process. And I can talk about my own self that I considered it as well to be the most difficult task back in my own early ages. And there was a time when I had no other option except just to remember and even memorize some specific phrases that I used to remember, that is how I'm going to start, and then I'll move onwards based on the writing which I can produce on my own. Why? Because in the initial stages it really is difficult. But we can't say as though it's a process which is simply difficult in the initial ages and once you move ahead you become a master. It doesn't happen all by itself. That's why you're going to see in different forms that detailed lectures are provided and conveyed and delivered on this writing process, because it's a very complex phenomenon. Another reason is that this writing is just not coming up with a content. It's basically a means of self-assessment as well as self-exploration. You are able to understand your inner self, your own personality, based on the writing that you can come up with at the end of the day. That's why the understanding of this writing process is so significant. Now if we move ahead and talk about, if we are calling it as a process, this process means that it is going to have certain stages. So generally speaking, we divide this writing process into three basic categories, or you can call it as three stages, and one stage basically leads to the next one. We of course starts with the pre-writing. Based on this pre-writing, we come to the writing process, and finally we come to the post-writing, and that is how you can call it as a cycle through which you produce the writing again and again. Now these are the names as well for these stages, just to make you understand what we actually do within these stages. For example, talking about the pre-writing, you can simply say that it's a form of planning that you do. Once you have done all the planning, then you can move to the actual drafting phase, when you start doing something and which has the final body as well to be viewed by your readership and you as well. And post writing is something which is basically applied on that draft which you have simply prepared within your second stage, and that you try to improve with these techniques which are part of the post writing, and together they form this writing process. So if we move ahead, we're going to simply focus in this lecture and within these slides towards the first stage, just to make you realize how important this planning is when it comes to preparing your own draft, and which is of course going to help you when you apply it over the technical writing as well. So let's talk about the pre-writing and what it basically is about. If you look at the word itself, this is simply indicating that pre means before, and writing, so before writing, anything which you are doing before the actual writing is the pre-writing. But that does not mean that it is not significant. The reason why we have given it a specific stage is that every task or activity that you are performing before the actual writing process is also going to play an important role within that writing. And that's why it has to be streamlined as well, which is going to help you organize yourself, and of course, as written in the previous slide, it will help you to plan what you really want to do. Therefore, of course, you can say that it's the first stage of the writing process, and this is basically the purpose of this stage, which is going to help you in the next one. You basically aim to discover and explore the initial ideas about the subject matter. This is the target that you really want to, as I mentioned earlier, writing itself is related to self-exploration. So you want to discover, on one hand you explore yourself, and then you try to discover what do you know regarding the subject matter. Is it really of interest, or you really want to go into the details, or if you have to research, you have to do it just to be able to write something related to that subject matter. So this is the manner in which you can understand pre-writing, that it aims to discover and explore the initial ideas about a subject. That's why we call it as the invention stage as well, that this is the point at which you're going to invent something, because it will give you the grounds on the basis of which you will be able to come up with the final product. That will of course be your writing. So that's why we call it as the invention stage. The rest are the details, basically, that anything you do before the writing of the first draft, and it also begins when you start thinking about your writing purpose and audience. So this thing also becomes important, that this is the point at which you have to define it to yourself, that why you are writing, and secondly, who is your audience. Now once again, the previous discussion is going to set a ground for you, that you now know how to determine your audience, and how can you simply pick the right kind of writing for yourself based on the nature of the audience itself. So on one hand, this purpose, and on the other, this nature of the audience is going to help you make this structure and organization within your mind, that which type of writing has to be done and which mode of writing should you use. And then once you are simply aware of this purpose and the audience, and the planning has been complete, then you come to some techniques which are basically used to generate the ideas. After all, it's the point and the phase at which you have to come up with some ideas. So in order to generate those ideas, there are some techniques that I myself even learned gradually and steadily with the passage of time, and it really made a difference that I used to do even within my own examination at the very beginning. Now let's see how you can do it basically. So starting from the very first point is that you have to choose a topic. Either you choose a topic if it's your own writing, and if it's a task assigned to you, so of course you will be given a topic. but that topic is going to be the factor which will have this central position throughout your writing process. So the first thing comes first, and that is choosing a topic. Of course, in the beginning, this topic will be a broad area. And within this broad area, what you have to do is that you have to start searching for the point which is really of your interest. Because if something is broad, of course, it covers multiple aspects with respect to that subject matter forming a topic. As we have here, that talking about history of Pakistan or Pakistan studies is basically a broad term. But if you talk about the partition movement, or if you talk about War of Independence or some specific moment or phase which becomes more specific compared to the general topic, which is more broad related to the whole history. So that is how you basically start from something broad and you simply delimit it to a point which is more specific, and of course something of your interest. So you have to search for this interest within that broad area, and that is going to define how you're going to go through that topic and how you're going to write about it. So that is how you have to move towards discovering an interest within that broad topic. Now this is the point at which I would like to mention here that discovering this interest sometimes becomes a bit difficult for the writers as well, the new writers, the beginners who are going to initiate learning this writing process. So in order to simply avoid this problem and to come up with a solution, there are certain set of questions that you can ask yourself just to get rid of this block which is simply stopping you from writing something. Now those set of questions are basically that if you have a topic, be it whether you talk about the broad area of the history of Pakistan, or then you try to simply make it more specific, then you can simply delimit to the partition movement, or if I talk about 1857. So I'm curious about what's the basic thing which simply makes it more curious, or which is simply more curious for me. What is developing this curiosity? One thing. Then if there is something confusing, that is of course taking your concentration as well. So you have to look into it as well. Then of course you have the topic, and recently I have been thinking about a lot about what. So these questions, if you ask them, are going to set you and help you to find your interest. And once you have found that interest, then comes the time of narrowing down that interest. Again, you have found that interest successfully, but that doesn't mean that you have to just talk and talk about it, because once again that is going to become more generalized. You have to make it more specific. Set some lines for yourself so that you can write about it more effectively. So narrow it down and keep it to the point where you have the expertise of talking or writing about a subject matter. So that is how you narrow your interest as well, making it to a plausible topic, a topic that you can handle, a topic that can be easily written about which you can either develop the expertise, or you already have sufficient knowledge that you know how to start and how to take it to the end. So that is how the journal subject matter has to be narrowed down based on your interest. We have this example for you as well, that Pakistan Studies to Partition Movement has simply, specified things, and they have also now developed your interest, because now you want to talk about partition movement. I can easily talk about war and independence, basically what were the basic reasons because of which they wanted to rise against the British rule, and what was the basic outcome, how Indians started to develop ties with them, and how Muslims were getting at a side, and then what happened, this Aligarh movement which started, multiple things, many examples, but the point is you have to specify that broad domain into a specific one. Another one could be this, your educational experience from the journal physical education to the new one which has just started, and that is hybrid learning. So you can, if someone asks you about the education, and of course this will be your interest, the new experience of hybrid learning, and you'd be able to talk about it with convenience, because now it is taking more focus. You have been thinking about it, you are talking about it, you are confused about it, or you are interested about it. It is simply developing that curiosity, and these are the things that you have to focus in order to narrow down your interest and topic. Now, once this searching of the interest and narrowing the topic has been complete, this is the point where you start using the different techniques, because there are different basic techniques which can be used in order to do this pre-writing, or in order to go through this pre-writing stage. So we have the names, you have listing, you have rapid sketches, you have conversation, you have doodling, circle technique, free writing, note keeping, brainstorming, mind mapping, generalized questions. You're going to see within this discussion that they overlap at certain point as well, but the purpose is the thing which gives them this definition, what they are basically meant for. The name is also going to help you understand their definition, and my lecture will also help you to get the idea what basically these techniques are for and how these can be used based on your own situation. So let's start a discussion over these techniques just to make you more aware of them. This is the first one, listings. Listing is basically from, of course, making a list. You basically jot down every idea that you have about a topic. So you have to simply, organize it in the form of a list. You have a topic, and now you have to come up with a list so that everything which comes in your mind should be written. The thing which you are supposed to do is that you can freely associate all those points which you have written in that list. There should be a link or a connection which would help you at the end of the day as well, that when the drafting begins, you know how to link the different ideas. So that is how you have to make a list. Why I have made it red is that do not stop because of any reason, whether it would be relevant or irrelevant. Everything which comes with respect to a topic or a subject matter should be written there in the form of a list. Despite everything, just write it down, whatsoever comes in mind. At the end of the day, it would help. Talking about the situation of an examination, if you are supposed to write an essay, over there you have an idea, you have to attempt the other questions as well. And there is a specific time that I have for writing that essay. So if you do this pre-writing, and whatsoever comes in mind, you just have to jot it down. Otherwise, if you start thinking whether this point is relevant or not, should I write it over here or not, you will lose it. You'll waste so many precious minutes which would have helped you to attempt some other relevant questions. That's the purpose of this pre-writing. You have this space of making mistakes, errors, blunders. Just write it. Don't hold back. This is the point. What you can do is that at least 10 minutes of brainstorming. What basically is brainstorming is also something coming ahead because it's a skill by itself. But basically, the storm within your brain has to come out. This development of ideas has to come out, and you have to, once this process of thinking has started, start writing it down. Everything. One word, or it could be phrase, or a sentence, or a list. It could be anything, but it has to come. These are the things to be ignored. It doesn't matter whether grammar mistakes are happening or not. You shouldn't think about it. Just focus on whatsoever comes in mind related to that idea. Another technique, very interesting technique, is of rapid sketches. Of course, you have a sketch related to a subject. So you have to do this. Rapid sketching means that you have to write it very quickly, irrespective of whether your writing is legible or not, whether you'd be able to read it or not. What about the reader? That is not the thing to concentrate on, or that's not the thing to worry about. You just have to write it very rapidly. So it's like sketching as well, because we know how basically sketching is done. In a similar way, you basically sketch all the ideas that you have in mind. That is basically the purpose. Again, you have to basically narrow down your topic, and that is how you basically start writing everything which comes within your mind. So you can simply see from the structure as well, if someone reads it, they'll simply get an idea that the writer wants to say something, but only the writer himself would know what basically has been written over here and how does it associate to the other points as well. Nothing big and political happened for just one reason, you know. Basically writing things to clarify your own self before the actual writing begins, because once you see those points, you will know why you have written it. It will remind you of the point which you had in mind, and that is how you'll be able to write it more effectively. These are some of the other examples as well of these rapid sketches, the manner in which you can do them, all related to the basic subject matter, your topic. So basically, it's used to narrow down your topic as well. These points will help you just to focus on which thing is important to be written and which thing can be ignored as well, as it is not pertinent. You have all the examples. And this is also another point with reference to your partition movement, War of Independence, two-nation theory. You have all the points there in front of you. So religion was another factor as well, which became the foundation. That's why it has been written over here as well in the form of rapid sketches. The next stage is, of course, or you can call it as a technique. I wouldn't say stage, because pre-writing itself is a stage, and within which these are all the technique. So conversation is also a very effective technique in order to explore yourself in a better and efficient way. If I am sitting here thinking about different ideas, of course I can come up with some. But if I am talking to someone, the point mentioned by that other person within that dialogue would certainly instigate me or simply help me and would trigger something within me which was not coming in mind at that point while I was simply sitting here thinking about it. So that single point said by that person is going to revive my own ideas as well. And this is something which a conversation does. And that's why it also exists as a pre-writing technique and strategy. You can simply discuss your ideas with anyone, and this discussion of ideas would be in the form of a two-way traffic. You sharing ideas and you are also getting some feedback as well. So this two-way traffic will simply revive your own other ideas as well, which were, I would call them, dormant, not coming within your mind. But now once you have started thinking about it, so this thinking will simply help you to explore further, and you can discover even better ideas for your actual drafting. For example, we have a lady here talking, what do you think caused the partition? Now this is coming here to this person, and he has simply replied the two-nation theory. Once again, the communication is going back, yeah, but doesn't that seem really significant? I mean, no movement ever started for just one reason. Again, you will have a reply, and that is, I do remember learning something about government control, excessive taxes, and a lot of pretty extreme pamphlet printing. So can you see ideas being shared over here? Different ideas being shared, and this two-way traffic or two-way communication has become the result of finding different points to be written within the actual draft. So this is what a conversation does, and you got the idea. And that is how you get the ending, which is, thanks, I'm going to the central library now for the actual step of drafting. There you have it. Now if we talk about this doodling or sketching, basically it's all about doodling. Doodling, if you are aware of the use of smartphone, there are multiple smartphone apps in which this special mode of doodling is also there for you to just simply come up with whatever is there within mind. Basically it's usually used within a smartphone to write something on a picture. Even you can write it on a blank white page as well within a smartphone, of course, but it's also a technique just to help you explore your own ideas, just to help you Basically you scribble, and by scribbling I mean to either write or draw your ideas for linking some together. So it basically, this scribbling gives you the space of, if you have, you're short of words, because there are so many things for which, like, you're short of words, you don't know how to write it, and you simply convey that idea by drawing a picture. If you are more comfortable by drawing pictures to convey the idea, of course this doodling gives you that space, and that is how you can do this pre-writing as well. For example, over here I can just simply write Jinnah, and then I can write Iqbal and Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan, and all the points which are coming within my mind, I can just start writing about these in that space provided to me, and their contribution with respect to the formation of Pakistan, the way Pakistan came into existence. So all the points that I have, I can simply write them by using this technique of doodling. So this is what you can do, and we have this example here for you, that you have the space to do whatever you want with this pen. This is also an interesting technique, the circle technique. Basically what you do is that you try to simply broaden your own ideas by using this circular technique, because when you draw these circles, and of course you have to write some text as well, within the smaller circle you place your own perspective. Once you have discussed it in detail, everything, all the points that you have in mind, then you try to broaden it by drawing another circle and placing some new perspectives which are more objective, more general, and which are not more or less related to your own personal perspective. It becomes more broad, not narrowed or specific. And then of course if you want to generalize it even more, you can draw another circle as well, and that is how this circular motion would continue. This is the definition, basically, that you have to look past your own perspective to a broader perspective. This is the basic focus when we talk about the circle technique. That of course you have to start with yourself and your opinion in the center, and then you have to move ahead. This is what you basically do. And if we simply give you the example of CPEC, a big topic of discussion, I can call it as a hashtag. Of course everyone is discussing, lots of talk on media as well. Now even, I can place it in a smaller circle, and now I have a big circle within my mind as well once I go through all the news which is there. So I can simply draw a smaller circle in which I can say that it's more or less related to Pak and China relationship, and then I can simply say that there is a bigger circle, a bigger perspective, more or less the perspective given by media, and that is of course of CPEC. And then comes another big circle which has gradually become more important, and that is OBOR. OBOR basically stands for One Belt, One Road. So CPEC has become part of this bigger project which is going through this whole Asian belt, and CPEC is just one part of it which will be passing through. The major part of it would be of course through Pakistan, so that's why we call it as the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So this is just one example, the manner in which you can say that narrowing down this discussion to Pakistan, which will be more or less related to the discussion on this relationship between Pakistan and China. You broaden it, you take it to the next level, so it will be a discussion related to this economic corridor, this investment which would be coming as a result of it. And then looking at across different countries within this Asia, so it becomes one belt, one road, so linking so many countries, so it has become even a bigger talk or biggest topic of discussion. And that is how you basically use this circle technique. Another way of looking at it is that I can place myself or my own perspective within the center. Then within the bigger circle I can place what is media thinking about it, and within the bigger circle the world's perspective. So that is how Once I've placed all the perspectives, then based on those outlook and ideas, I can simply come up with my own writing, generalizing it, narrowing it down, as well as broadening it. So I can do everything based on this circle technique. Clustering is, as you can simply look at the word itself, is from cluster. And you know, we talk about cluster is that you have different, if you have an object, if you have a group of it, you can simply say it's a cluster of these. I can call it anything, cluster of balls or anything. But the purpose is, cluster is that you have an assembly or aggregation or a group. But the thing is, when things are in an abundant amount, you call it as a cluster. And if you want to assemble multiple ideas and to link them together as well, to show that these are connected one way or another, and within your writing you want to show those links as well, then of course you use this technique of clustering, not only to facilitate yourself in the organization, but also to help in the writing process as well, when you have to talk about these ideas and to link one from the other. Sometimes this ball may have this link with this one as well, and also with this one. This one may have with this ball as well as this one. So these links would be there. In actual, when we talk about clustering basically, so if these are, if this is the central one and you have to link it with each one of them, they might be connected with one another as well. So you can simply not only talk about with respect to this central point, but you can also talk in respect of the points which are there at the periphery. So you can link them in every way you want, and you're going to see it. Basically I was doodling it, that's why you were unable to get the idea, but you will get it once we move ahead. Talking about clustering, basically it's a technique for visual learners, the ones who are more effective in learning through visual aids. That's why they use and draw these pictures in order to connect different ideas together. And of course the focus is not only this visual representation, but also on linking. You link these circles together to show the connection which is there between them, not only among these circles but also between the circles coming at the end. That is how you basically cluster. And if this is the basic central topic, then you have to show that how it is related to the one at the periphery. So to get started, basically you have to place your general subject in a circle in the middle of a blank sheet of paper, as you have this star shaped ideas, and you can see the topic is basically placed in the center. And once this topic has been placed, then you have drawn 5 separate circles as well at the periphery, in which you have written idea 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you simply begin to draw other lines in circle that shoot out of them, and then you cluster the idea that are coming within your mind, which are related to this central topic, and you can also connect one idea to the other as well. But the basic point is, once again, linking and visual representation for your own convenience when the real writing process begins. Just have a look at this example as well, a better example compared to my doodling. So you can see over here, this is the central topic, War of Independence. From this central topic, you have drawn this circle of causes, and from this causes you have drawn additional one, suppression, and sometimes you are confused as well. You don't know what to write. You can simply draw a question mark as written over here. What else caused the war for yourself? You made culture as a reason, and from this War of Independence you can see you have made another circle related to the main events of that war. So you have simply highlighted this, and of course you have written in a separate circle regarding the outcome as well. So each subject matter, each subtopic has been linked with some other ideas as well, which would help you at the end of the day, that once you start talking about the causes, you will directly move to these other bubbles as well to help you whether to talk about this one or the other one. So that is how you can simply move from one idea to the other based on those links which you have developed. And of course these are some of the reasons. The outcome are written over here, as you can see over here, and then you came up with basically the solution, how it all came to an end, how the relationship was once again back to normalcy, of course by the contribution of Sayyid Ahmad Khan and all the others who were part of it as well. Just an example, but basic idea has been made clear that, and you have to do clustering, so how to order your ideas and how to link them together, that's how you do it. Then another way of going through this pre-writing is to question your own statements and ideas. The basic purpose is that once you are doing this pre-writing, so it doesn't mean that you just have to do or apply a single pre-writing technique. You can use, in association with one single pre-writing technique, another one as well. And based on one single pre-writing technique, if you have written some statements and ideas for yourself, the next thing is questioning them, questioning your own statements, because that is how you're going to explore about that idea even further. So you have to come up with some questions as well. For example, if you have written these lines as I have written earlier as an example of the other forms of writing, I can call it as listing. So if these are the points which you have written, nothing big and political happened for just one reason. So how about asking why not? So you will think of some reasons as well. Or people in power often struggle with ego. So you can say, do you have an example to prove this stance? Questioning your own statements, questioning your own self, so that you can come up with some more authentic results, with some more authentic example. So all these examples related to what about religion, so prove this, like what, how do you know? You have to simply question your own statement. This is basically the point, and it will also become another pre-writing technique. Now once these techniques have been covered, now we're going to go through some other major techniques as well that you might be well aware of, you might be hearing about them, but we are going to look into the details of these techniques so that now you start applying them for your actual writing process. So this free writing is also a very important technique, even that I do quite often when I have to write about something. So I do this to collect my own ideas as well, just to write some points. I sometimes use listing as well, sometimes I go for the clustering as well, because it really helps me to link ideas. For different subject matters, I try to use different techniques as well, because it basically helps me to organize and simply help me conceptualize and simply extract everything that I have within mind, because sometimes it's not coming in mind. But if one technique is not working, you try the other, it may work out. So that's why these techniques have been developed for this purpose. So free writing, you can simply do this note keeping, you can do brainstorming. We're going to look to this brainstorming in detail, but basically it is the mind mapping journalistic questions. So now the focus would be on these 5 pre-writing techniques, starting from the free writing. Talking about the free writing itself, you are being provided a freedom to write, and that's why there is no space for you to simply think of stopping at any point. This is basically the purpose of free writing before the actual writing begins. Everything which is there within your mind, you just have to jot it down. If it's a paper, jot it down on a piece of paper. If you are typing, so you just have to, rather than calling it free writing, I can also call it as free typing, because you don't have to think about whether you are making any errors or not, but you just have to simply write or type whatsoever strikes within your mind with respect to a topic, and that is how you are able to free write. You have a blank sheet of paper or a new Word document. You have to write for 10 to 15 minutes without thinking about whether you are going in the right way or not, whether you're making any errors or not. Ideas should be expressed, whatever comes in your mind. And this is the point. No worries about these things. These are not the issue. This is also something to avoid when we talk about the free typing or free writing. So you don't have to change, correct or delete it. No, that is not the purpose. You just have to focus on this point. writing and writing the entire time, and that is how you're able to express everything. Just one tip for you, when it comes to the free typing, so it becomes a bit tricky because there is a spell check, and that spell check is just continuously confusing you when it comes to typing on a Word document, highlighting things in red and blue. So if you are typing your content and it's continuously telling you that at this point this thing has not been written in the correct way, at this point this word has an incorrect error, it can create a lot of confusion for you. You won't be able to stay focused on what you are writing. An ideal tip that I also give, that I learned from my friends, from my teachers as well, is that if you are good at typing, good thing is just to turn off your screen and then start typing whatsoever comes in mind. Document is basically in itself open. You just have to turn off the screen for a while so that in front of you there is a black screen. You can't see what you are writing. Then start writing. Keep typing. Once you know you have expressed all the ideas, then you can open it. And of course you'll have the space of looking at the keyboard as well, and you'll stay focused on what you're thinking. You can see all the keys as well, so it will help you, it will facilitate you to express all your ideas when it comes to the free writing. A good tip, you can give it a try, especially for the beginners. Of course, if you're already an expert, Word can't say anything or do anything, you don't bother whether some good content is being showed on the Word screen or not, so give it a try. You can keep the screen open as well. But the point here is once again that you just have to avoid all the distractions, because this distraction is something known as the writer's block as well. It's a term that you can study and explore in detail on the internet as well, but it's basically something which acts as an impediment, an obstacle, and a block which is stopping you from that writing. Can be a psychological writer's block, it can be a physical writer's block, you know, the noise or the pollution which is there in front of you, all the distractions which are simply making you annoying, which is basically annoying you, and that's why you're unable to focus on that topic. So avoid all those distractions, keep them at side, and then do this writing, because once you're focused on it, then you would be able to write. This is the beauty of writing, and once you're focused, you'll come up with very beautiful writing, because you'll know what you can think of, you'll know how you can organize it, and then you'll be able to draft it. This is how you can do it as well. Allow yourself to write or type for 10 minutes. Don't stop, don't worry about typos, and just write everything that comes in mind and related to this War of Independence. This is one sample written by a very good writer, and that is how he basically also did all this free writing. Look at the manner in which there are some spaces as well in which nothing was coming in mind, but still he kept on writing, and that is how you basically free write. So you don't think of the error. There might be some errors as well. The basic purpose is just to let you know that this is the result of this 5 to 10 minutes of free typing or free writing. And there you have it, a picture of free writing. And this can be refined and can be made even better when the real actual phase of drafting begins. Now for your own practice, now I want you to do this task for me. For 3 to 5 minutes, free write on this topic. What is the most memorable moment you have ever had in childhood? So my task for you starts now. Good thing would be just to pause me over here, take a page and pen, just based on everything that I've discussed, do this free writing for 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not asking for 10 minutes. Pause me for 3 to 5 minutes. Start free writing. Once you've written something, then you have my permission to play and move onwards. Hopefully you have done that task of free writing. You'll know how to do it again to make it more better, and that's why it's time to move ahead and look towards the heuristics methods. Now this word heuristics is very interesting, a bit tricky as well, because its actual definition can be little bit different from its definition when it comes to understanding this concept of free writing. Because talking in journal, I have this definition here in front of you as well, that basically you call it as a problem-solving approach, which is basically employed as a practical method sufficient to achieve goals. However, it's not guaranteed to be perfect. So the point is basically that heuristic methods are developed to solve a problem. That's why it's called as a problem-solving approach. But the point has to be remained in mind that the results achieved and the methods used cannot be considered perfect. It's basically something that you have used and developed to solve a problem, but it won't be considered absolute, which can be applied by all means. But if you have some conditions, you can apply that method to achieve some goals. So this is basically covering all the heuristic methods. You can look into the detail as well, but our main focus, of course, is the writing process. We have to concentrate on the definition of those heuristic methods with respect to the manner in which they can help in the writing process. If you talk about this heuristic methods, it's more or less related to asking yourself a fixed set of questions to generate ideas and information about any topic. So, of course, only effective if you have the topic already. So, topic has to be there, of course, and then you have to ask some fixed set of questions which are going to generate further ideas to help you move ahead to the actual drafting process. How you can go through it? Basically, these are some of the heuristic methods which are used within the pre-writing process. So, you have cubing technique, you have the tuck mimics, you have Aristotle's common topics or common questions, you have dramatism by, of course, the Kenneth Burke, and then generalist questions of who, what, where, when, why, and how, also known as the W-H questions. So let's start, of course, with the cubing technique. And when I say cubing, basically it doesn't mean that kind of cube, but if you modify it to have 6 angles. So this is what I mean, that this is the cube I am referring to. This is this sort of a cube. A cube which has 6 angles is basically the one which has to be applied in your pre-writing. Now, what do we mean by this sort of cube and how it can be applied in pre-writing? Basically, you have to ask 6 questions or describe 6 things with respect to a topic which are going to have a separate angle. So, you are going to work on a topic from 6 separate angles. What are those 6 angles? Now, we are going to look at them. We'll start from describing. I won't say start. These are the 6 angles. You basically describe, you compare, then you associate, then you analyze, then you apply, and then you argue. So these together are going to form the 6 angles which are used to deal with the topic within the pre-writing stage. So you can look at it as well from another perspective, that is that you describe a topic, you compare or contrast it, you associate it with the other relevant ideas, then of course you look into it for the analysis, then you talk about the application, the manner in which it can be applied, or if it's a method itself it can be applied, and then you argue either in favor of it or against it. So these are the 6 angles, and from these 6 angles you basically talk about a topic or you organize your ideas based on this technique of cubing. Then comes the tuck mimics. Tuck mimics is also like a technique which is basically part of this field of social sciences, the linguistics, scientific study of languages. With respect to linguistics, basically this is the definition, that you basically analyze the different units forming a sentence. As we know, within a sentence you have subject, you have a predicate. Another way of looking at it is that you have phrases and clauses. Then another way of looking at it is that you have nouns, you have verbs, you have adverbs, adjective, and so on and so forth. So there are different parts of speech. There are many things to look at when we talk about studying a sentence by analyzing the different units. This is basically tagmimics. But talking about the pre-writing and its association with this concept of tagmimics, so there are three angles once again to look at a topic. Three ways to define and work on a topic. You define your topic as a particle, you define it as a wave, and then you define it as a field. Now the concept itself looks very interesting. It really indeed is. When we talk about a topic as a particle, so basically it means that you have to just talk about it as it is a self-contained object, and you just have to focus on it. That is it, irrespective of the surroundings or its impact on the surrounding. This should be your first focus. Defining an object, any topic, any subject matter, just talk about it as though it's in itself, and that's it. First way of defining a topic. The next is turning that particle into a waveform, and as we know, wave moves in this form, rise and fall, and that rise and fall basically is moving on this scale of time. You have a rise and you have a fall, so that means how that particle is changing over time. There is a concept of wave particle as well, although it's more related to physics. We talk about certain particles that they have this nature of particle as well as a wave. So wave particle theory as well. But no need to go into the detail, actually, because of this picture on the right I came up with this idea, so that's why I discussed it. But the point is that from this nature of being that topic being as a particle, now you have to turn it into a wave and talk about it, how it moves in time or how it changes with time. That will be your next focus. And once you have talked about nature as a particle, then its nature as a wave, the subject matter, you have to move ahead and talk about its overall impact towards the surroundings, meaning you have to talk about the bigger picture or how it fits into the bigger picture. So that's why these are the focal points, talking about particle, wave, and then the overall field in relation to the field. That is how you look into it. Now talking about an example just to help you. If that particle is a war, then of course you have to talk about what basically war is in itself. Once you have talked about the war, then you can move ahead and talk about its changing nature. You can simply say what can be the reasons of a war, how it changes over the time, how it develops. So the development would also cover the reason. And once the reason has been explained, then you can move and talk about the outcome, because this outcome is one way or another related to, you talk about this one and its impact over this entire area, because that is the field of this particle and how is it affecting the overall field. That is how you have to move when it comes to the technique of tagmimics. We can now move to the next pre-writing technique, and that is the Aristotle's common questions. These are also very useful when we have to do this pre-writing, and if you look at the different forms of questions and having their own separate natures, having their own different targets, if you have to define something or if you have to come up with a definition with respect to the subject matter. So these are the questions. How does a dictionary define? What other words mean approximately the same? Just to give a reference of those words as well if they are relevant, otherwise you can just keep them aside. So you have to develop an understanding of those other words as well, and you have to, with respect to a topic, give a dictionary definition as well. Then talking about the circumstances, what would it take for dash to happen? Your subject matter, what would it take for this to happen? And then what would prevent it from happening? So of course you're talking about the reason, and then of course talking about how to avoid it. Then of course this is also giving you a picture of looking into the details of all those circumstances which became the reason. Of course, these two are pretty much related, but over here the heading itself indicates that all those circumstances can be covered when we talk about such questions, whereas if you want to relate two things that this basically becomes the reason of this, then you can come up with questions like what causes this thing or what is the consequence of this thing. If you have to relate two things together, coming up with a relationship, then you can ask such questions. Then if you have to come up with a comparison, so what is dash similar to and different from? So you have to do this comparison and contrast. You can come up with these questions, and if you have to come up with some opinions, so do I know any facts or statistics about subject? If so, what? So making it more relevant, making it more authentic, so you need to come up with a testimony. So these are the questions which are also very much useful. The Aristotle's common question that if you ask can help you organize your content as well. Answering these questions will give you some answers, and those answers can be useful and applied for preparing your draft. Dramatism, developed from drama. Of course, within the drama, just think of it, we watch dramas, although on television, but of course if you look at it, the manner in which at the end of a drama all the details of names, the producers, directors, the cameraman, the script writers, the details are coming, and these are the actual makers other than the actors who are part of that drama. So keeping in view all those names, you should know that a drama is based on setting an act, then you have the actors, then you have the scene, then of course something has to happen, climax point, and then you take it to the end, and together it forms a drama. So if talking about this technique of dramatism, of course it was invented by Kenneth Burke, the famous American theorist known for this study of the nature of knowledge and its comprehension. So he also gave this technique of dramatism, and based on the studies this technique has been developed even further. So if we talk about the 5 dramatic elements, these are basically the elements which can help you organize your writing as well, and that's why it's also used as a pre-writing technique. We can say that if we talk about taking that topic and classifying or categorizing it to discuss the act, we'll get the answer of what is happening. Then of course if we think of an agent, so we'll get the answer of who is performing it. Then if we talk about the mechanism or the agency, we'll be able to talk about how it all happened. And then if we talk about the purpose, we can simply write in detail about why it is all happening. And then talking about a scene as it is there within a drama, we'll get a description of when and where. So all these dramatic elements are and can play a pivotal role if you can use them strategically for preparing your content, and that's how this technique of dramatism can be very useful. As written over here, can be combined to inspire some sub-questions as well. So this act, agent, agency, purpose, scene are all very much useful and can be placed in front of yourself, and then you can just ask these questions to yourself. What is happening, where and when, who is doing it, what is the goal, and simply what's the outcome. So you get all the answers to these questions if you place them in front of you, and that is how these dramatic elements can help you within the pre-writing as well. Note keeping. Note keeping basically is similar to, or I would say the same thing, because I used to hear a lot about it within my childhood as well, within my school days. We were told by our teachers as well to keep and maintain a diary. And I used to watch some tunes as well, in which tunes used to write something on a diary like, "Dear diary, I had a good day and I did this and I did that, I had a wonderful experience, I went to that park," and so on and so forth. But diary is simply kept like a friend. At that time, we didn't realize the basic purpose, but it's basically to sharpen your writing skills. You keep on writing something, and this link between your pen and mind develops in such a way. If you do anything within your childhood, it becomes a skill. So you are told in your early stages to maintain a diary. At that time, although it helps you in the long run just to look back in time what you used to write, but in the long run, another advantage and a basic advantage is that it helps you to sharpen your own writing skills. It helps you to organize your ideas, and that's why this note keeping becomes an important thing as well. So keeping a journal or a notebook, an excellent way to practice your writing skill. That's why it's written over here. Even you can try it even now. If it's feasible, you can just simply give it a try. Maintain even a short sticky note or a short notebook. Just write the basic points, and then you can even write phrases as well. It will help you not only to just look back in time, what you used to do, what you have done for the interesting thing, but will help you as well to organize your ideas. This is basically the point which sums up everything about this note keeping, that I discover what I really think by writing it down. So it's more or less related to the actual purpose of writing. Self-exploration, self-assessment. If you write it, so you discover what interests you, and then you can explore it further by writing about it even more. And this is basically the purpose of note keeping. How to keep a journal, some of the techniques. Every morning or night for at least 15 minutes you can write in detail about what most angered, moved or amused you. Not fixed. You can write about anything, but just some suggestions, amusement, anger, or something which simply interests you, something of interest, or something which simply jolted you. Then this is really something which is catching my attention, so you can write about it. Point to remember is that it is private, so don't worry about the grammar and correctness. Once again, similar to free writing, because you have this space, no one is looking at it. They're going to look at your actual draft. Over here, the purpose is again the same. You have to explore your inner self, your interest, and then you can narrow it down. That is how you can do this journal entry. You place this date, and the day started with waking up, late for the convocation, quite unlike me, and then you have this emoticon as well. So your emotions are expressed, your pauses are there, every feeling is being jotted down over here, and that is supposed to be there within a journal entry. Brainstorming. Again, I gave you an idea talking about the initial phases of the lecture, but the purpose is once again the same, that it's more or less related to your thinking. That ideas related to a subject matter, you just try to assemble them together, you try to organize them together, and then you try to provide that picture on a piece of paper. Everything which is there within your mind with respect to a subject matter. So this is basically brainstorming. Collecting the ideas, thinking about them, writing them down, every idea that is coming to your mind. And point to remember is that you don't have to evaluate. This is not a time for the assessment whether it is going to be the right one or wrong one. Whatsoever comes, you just have to place it, just have to write it. Either individually or in group, because group means again the same thing. You can involve a person in a conversation as well and then try to extract ideas. But you can of course do it either individually or in group. Both are possible. An example in front of you, that what do I do with $1 million? So you can think of all the things, but hopefully I can say that you can think of many other things as well, because our own brains have separate ideas, a very complex network, so you can think of even better options. So that's why do this brainstorming, and this is basically the practice here for you. 5 minutes to brainstorm ideas about the following question. So if the question is something that I place in front of you, what are some of the most memorable experiences of your life? So I once again give you 5 minutes. You can simply pause my video and then jot down all the things storming within your mind, and once you have done it, play the video. These are some of the examples which I assume you may simply write, because that is something which I could write as well. So this is the manner in which you can go through this brainstorming, jotting it down, and then once you have jotted it down, you can think of organizing and linking the ideas together. And that is how you basically do this brainstorming. Mind mapping is also very interesting because, as the name suggests, this is the basic idea center, and everything comes over here at the first place. This is the site where you are supposed to develop a map of what you basically have to do. Within a map, things are ordered, everything has a logical arrangement, and through this map you are able to find your treasure as well. So that is why you have to map your mind. And once that mind map has been developed within your mind, then you have to show it to yourself, to your eyes as well, by placing it or drawing it in front of you on a paper as well. So more or less, if the topic is related to you, then you can of course go for the idea mapping, because one way or another it's related to you, you would be able to think of it. So you can call it as webbing as well, because you have this web of ideas, you have to connect it together, cluster the ideas together, and then draw it as well to help you when the real drafting begins. So you organize your ideas, start with the topic and placing it at a center, then branch out all the related ideas which are one way or another related, and then you link them together as well. Better to use words or phrases. Of course you can to an extent the complete sentences as well, but that is not the ultimate objective, because that will be the objective within the drafting phase. Right now, as we are focusing on the pre-writing, so better to use just words and phrases. For example, if you are told to talk about your future plans, that's how you place your central circle. You think about your family, your school, then work, and from these circles you develop some additional circles, as you can see over here happening in front of you. So in a similar way, your brain is working inside your head, and you have to draw the same picture in front of you so that it can help you in the actual drafting. See, even now you are coming up with ideas, as I can see here. I can see your brain still working. That is how basically our brain works, and the purpose is here to show you that you just have to spend some 5 to 10 minutes, and that is how the ideas will keep on popping and bubbling within your mind as it was happening here in front of you. So over here, a practice session once again for you, that you have to draw a map to organize your ideas about the following topic: how to learn English. As you are learning, you have been learning, you have seen some lectures. Based on that understanding which you have developed, you can just simply take a start of how to move in a logical sequence. First think, then develop the map, and then draw that map here in front of you to help you. The journalistic questions. You watch TV, you can see, you have seen different press conferences as well, and before the person, call them the focal person, the one who is the actual speaker, in front of him or her is an audience, and that audience is filled up with some journalists who have to write articles on newspapers, to come up with some reports as well. But the point is, they are the ones coming up with some WH questions, and these WH questions is also a pre-writing technique that can be used in your case as well when you have to do this pre-writing. Asking yourself 6 questions, again those WH. How is something happening? What is happening? Where is it happening? When is it happening? In which way, or which is it referring to, or who is doing this? In which way it is happening? So these are the questions that you have to ask, as this is the example here in front of you. What happened? Where did it happen? Who missed the final? How did the crowd react after saving the amount? How did the captain respond? And so on. You get the idea. That is how, if you ask these WH questions to yourself, you will know how to write it in a logical sequence as well, because now you have the answer, and this answer can lead you towards ordering it and organizing it, be it in the form of a list or cluster or bubble, but you have the answer to these questions as well. that is the way in which you can ask all these questions. And again, a situation here in front of you for the practice. You can write an incident report about an accident in the company's boiler room, which must include the date, location, time, personnel involved, causes and financial loss. And for example, imagine you have heard about a robbery, a bag of diamonds is stolen and the owner is murdered. What generalist questions would you ask to investigate? So before we move ahead, keep in view this situation, I want you to become the investigator, come up with some, think of yourself as a spy, and then you have to come up with some investigation, think of the questions, structure them in front of you, and then ask them to yourself whether these are the questions to be asked based on the situation which has been provided to me, and then we'll move ahead. Based on those questions, I hopefully say and can assume that you would have come up with the following question. At what time did the robbery take place? Where did it happen? How many robbers were there? Are there any eyewitnesses? So this is the manner in which you can structure these WH questions, and as you can see, they can provide you with the comprehensive details of all that incident which you are focusing.
Let's have a brief overview of what we have studied in this lecture. In today's lecture, you have learned about the writing process in general, but specifically pre-writing in detail. The writing process has 3 stages. First is pre-writing. That means planning before actual writing. Second is writing. That stands for drafting a piece of writing. Third is post-writing. That means finishing the end product. In today's lecture, we have not covered writing and post-writing, but a detailed description of pre-writing and its different techniques. Let's define pre-writing. It's the first step in the traditional writing process known as the invention stage. It is anything you do before writing your first draft, usually begins with thinking of your writing purpose and audience. Using pre-writing techniques, you generate ideas about a topic. First comes choosing a topic of your interest. This involves discovering your interest and then narrowing it. Some of the pre-writing techniques are: number 1, listing, which means to jot down every idea you have about your topic. Number 2, rapid sketches, which helps in narrowing your topic. Number 3, conversation, in which you discuss your ideas with someone else. Number 4, doodling or sketching, that means to scribble some ideas. Number 5, clustering, which allows you to visually see how ideas can go together under each cluster. Number 6, brainstorming, when you think about your topic and write down every idea that comes to your mind. Number 7, note keeping, in which you discover what you think by writing it down. Number 8, free writing, which includes writing whatever comes to your mind about the topic.
And this brings us to the conclusion of our today's session. You have realized the importance of this pre-writing. Pre-writing doesn't mean something before pre-writing, so that means prehistoric writing, something which is not as important as the writing itself, but pre-writing basically means the first step of writing, which takes you to the actual writing. So this foundation has to be strong. Once this is strong, the building over it would be strong as well, and then it would be needing some touches as well, which would be discussed after the writing, which is post-writing. So far covered the writing process and of course the pre-writing techniques with examples. In the next lecture we are going to talk about the writing process. Thank you.